Hey guys, this is John with Balcony DAO. I'm here at ETH Denver still. Today I'm sitting down with my buddy Dan Ritchie over here, who has a similar project in a lot of ways. He is an inaugural council member of City DAO, which I'm eager to hear about. Tell us a little bit about this DAO and how you got involved with it.
So, as someone who's just interested in Web3, getting involved into the crypto community, understanding blockchain better, I found out about DAOs and read actually Vitalik's paper, Crypto Cities came out at the end of October. And the idea was, can we put not only actual real physical land on the blockchain, but can we also govern cities using blockchain and DAO-like organizations? And that was really interesting. It's experimental. No one else is really doing it. Seemed like a great community, and I thought I'd jump in and get involved.
So how soon after City DAO was founded did you get involved? Or do you know the founders? Like, what's that backstory?
Let's see. So it was probably, I think it started midsummer, and it was probably late fall, early winter when I got involved. So I was a little late in that sense, but they're still minting and still trying to navigate the lay of the land. So early-ish, but not super early, like not with the founders and that.
And what was your path into the DAO? Was it the permissionless path of DAO lore, or did you send an email, show up with a suit and tie and a briefcase, laud the founders with all sorts of...
No, I showed up and I asked how I could get involved, what needed to be done, what skills did I have that I could contribute. Actually at the time I wondered, like you hear this, people talk about, I'll just go show up and get involved, and I thought, yeah, is it really going to work well that way? And it has. I was actually really surprised to find out that there were opportunities which were recognized in ways that made it meaningful for me to continue.
That's amazing. What was your skill set that you contributed to City DAO?
Well, let's see. Curiosity isn't really a skill set, but we had situations come up where there wasn't really a good answer, and I didn't know the answer, and I'm trying to learn about this whole space. So just picked up a shovel and went down the rabbit hole, tried to figure out how things worked. One example of that would be we had a scam where unfortunately a link was sent out that wasn't an official link, and some people lost some money. So we went down the rabbit hole for the on-chain analysis, figured out that there were other scams involved, and this was like a group that was actually actively taking money from people, and DAOs like City DAO. Wasn't terribly meaningful, and that wasn't like we outed anybody and anybody got money back, but being able to identify those things was helpful. We had the inaugural city council elections. We didn't know how those were going to work as far as tallying votes and things like that, so learning about governance and the approval method versus IRV voting, and why
don't you break down IRV voting, because I think a lot of people aren't familiar with quadratic voting and IRV voting and so forth.
Sure. So for IRV, one of the challenges that we had was we were actually looking at multiple council members. So IRV in this case wasn't applicable, but instant runoff, which isn't terribly popular in the United States, is basically used to say, when you have a field of possible contestants or candidates, they're going to get an allocation of random votes. Well, you need a quorum, you need some majority, whatever the threshold is. Typically, 50% is your threshold for one candidate. On that first pass of tallying the votes, you're not going to necessarily get over 50%. No one candidate is going to get over 50%. So you can drop off the lowest count, and any votes that they had, you can add to their next choice, right? Because there's multiple selections that person will vote for. And as you keep iterating through that, eventually you accumulate votes which are enough rounds pass where you accumulate a certain number of votes and you get above the threshold and somebody ends up winning 50% of the vote. So it's instant runoff for every single round until you have greater than 50% of the votes.
So, I'm just to kind of like double click on that for a second. Do you think that the City DAO model of acquiring land, putting it on the blockchain and governing it on the blockchain and then employing these alternative voting techniques is a model that translates into broader government, and this becomes sort of, the micro? Part of my theory is one of the things that these DAOs can do is fail, right? But if we get enough of these DAOs out there in the Web3 space, we can start to see which models are succeeding, which models are failing, and why. And maybe this becomes like the petri dish, this becomes the laboratory for broader experiments in democracy in the United States.
You've got it, and that is, I think, one of the most exciting aspects of this. In the real world, government tends to move fairly slowly. You have a large number of constituents who have a long history of being represented, and if you were to introduce, and this could be low-level local governments all the way up to federal government, if you're to introduce a new way of voting, a new experimental petri dish of an idea, no one really wants to try that out, right? So you have this gap between, hey, we'd like to try something new, but we're not willing to, and unless that happens, you're not going to have something that's viable in the real world. I think CityDAO, the promise of CityDAO is that that's a huge opportunity to throw it out there and see what sticks. And if we fail, well, we're with a community that understands that we're not governing a country here. We're not actually, the constituency that we have here is bleeding edge, is the Web3 crowd who's trying to figure out how all this works. Quadratic voting in Colorado, they're just experimenting with that right now. There's a bounty from the state of Colorado around quadratic voting. Well, why can't CityDAO partner with actual real governments and say, what do you need? What type of experiment can we run for you? Because we have citizens who understand that that's the nature of what we're doing. And that's actually a big component of the operating agreement that we're building out right now.
So how do you memorialize the spirit of what you just described in an OA for DAO members?
This is the core of the current conversation. On one hand, we want to say the door is wide open to experiment and do all these things that we want, but on the other hand, we have to plant the flag and declare that this is what we will be offering. We're 2 weeks into this right now, so we're just sorting out the details, but the spirit is exactly that, right? The declaration that will be memorialized is the foundational core of what we're doing, has to allow for the possibility of the next round of whether it's quadratic voting or harbinger taxes or any of these things that you're seeing in like radical markets, these really wild ideas. Like a wild idea today is great. We're not going to codify that in a way that says this is all that CityDAO can ever be, right? Because we want to leave that door open in perpetuity.
So look, it's the give and take, especially with real world assets, especially when you have a rub like for what we're doing at Balcony DAO. We're going to be developing properties in municipalities where individual developers will have individual relationships with individual people in city government. They may be a chosen developer in a redevelopment zone, for example, where you can't just have the DAO just decide, oh, you know what, Dan, I'm not really feeling you anymore. I need you to go, right? That doesn't work, right? And so you have to be honest, I think, with your constituents, with your DAO, whatever you want to call them. You're literally CityDAO, so I guess these are kind of like your virtual citizens, right? You have to be honest and be like, look, there's certain rights you can never have here, right? And there needs to be certain latitude and flexibility for us to try things like change the world by introducing completely new voting techniques that are probably going to fail, right? And then the question becomes, how do you compensate people for that? And there's sort of like two types of compensation. You have the esoteric compensation of like building a drum circle, singing Kumbaya and high-fiving each other, which is fun, and I'm into it, I'll do that, right? But then there's the other compensation, which is your token, right? Your tokenomics,
totally.
Right? So I think like the next question is, how do you use your tokenomics in a way that supports this vision and keeps people satisfied that they've been given a fair deal?
Oh my gosh. Activating your talent is something that we see necessary across the board, right? Very, very few DAOs or even real world organizations, traditional organizations, know how to really deploy capital and activate talent in effective ways. That's a challenge that is especially hard for decentralized organizations that are, 10,000 strangers that came together overnight around this sort of fuzzy cause that they're all getting behind. Deploying capital, I think has to happen because, you can come to the table and say, hey, I want to participate in this conversation, doors wide open, and so, everybody can come have a seat at the table. But at some point, people need to be compensated or recognized in ways that go beyond, I'm willing to put in my nights and weekends and free time in perpetuity, right? So when you do have talent that shows up, when you do have people that can contribute things, there has to be a way to really motivate them. And I think part of that is financial, part of that is, it could be the tokenomics, it could be even kind of a contractual kind of standard relationship where you're going to give me something and I'm going to compensate you directly for that. Maybe I'll take this opportunity to shill our hackathon project.
Pause. cold shill. Just want to prep you. We're looking for a cold shill.
Ice cold,
Yeah.
ice cold.
So if you're gonna shill it, you gotta shill it hard. Go, boy.
All right.
Shill it.
So when you have volunteers, when you have like the sub-financial contributors, right, or non-financial contributions, people who are motivated for all kinds of reasons. We focused on small farmers, the farming community. Because you think about how we get fed all across the world, we get fed from volunteers, right? Woofers, kids out of college are going out and you get free labor for the summer because they want to change the world. Or if you have your local food system, you're going to have people who are going to have to get in their cars and drive food boxes around and deliver them to whoever it is that needs to receive that food. It's very needy people. This is a wonderful cause, altruistic as it gets. No recognition, no recognition. Same thing at DAOs, right? If you're not contributing to a level where you're getting compensated and it's a really substantial contribution and you don't get some financial compensation, high fives aren't going to cut it. That's why we came up with Kudos. And that's what we're pitching here for East Denver.
What are you pitching?
Kudos, right? So we're going to try to bridge the gap between volunteer contributions, people who are just doing things out of the goodness of their heart, and not being so much that they're going to get financial rewards, but recognize them somehow, right? We're not talking about a full token here, but something that's non-transferable, that doesn't carry any real financial value, but at the end of the day, you can go brag to your friends and say, check out how many Kudos I've accumulated. Because I've done all these contributions for farmers markets or volunteer work around the world or DAOs. It could be, take it wherever you want.
I think I saw this, which is CUDOS, right? Is that it?
KUDOS.
Okay, that's how it's normally spelled. But there's also a Kudos with a C.
Well, this isn't us. This could be.
Forget that other company.
Yeah.
We're talking about Kudos spelled the way God intended, right? We're going to hard shill Kudos right now. And now
That's right.
Kudos as an organization that's basically taking this esoteric concept of do-gooderism and creating this NFT flex tool out of it, right? Your headquarters live inside of the City DAO metaverse. Are you in
No,
Midtown in City DAO? Is that where you guys are located?
This is a group of hackers that came out of City DAO
Right.
and said we want to biddle at East Denver. Let's see what we can come up with. And the only thing that we started with was we want to help small farmers and the agricultural community. That's where this whole thing started. That's all we had. A week ago, that's all we had. And then we kind of evolved into this, right?
Oh, so you're still on startup high.
Oh, this is like old school, roll up your sleeves, get dirty and biddle hackathon territory, yeah.
See, that's my favorite thing. I like to build, but I like to build with builders,
Yeah.
It's one thing to have a whole bunch of generals, but man, I love them bullet catchers. I kind of like to smell the gunfire, you know what I mean? And that's the cool thing about Denver. It's you get up with these guys for these hackathons and these guys want to move, and I love the speed. The speed is sexy.
Yeah.
Speed is really sexy.
Yeah, we're just having fun. This is someone brought up the idea of well, maybe this isn't just about agriculture. This isn't just about farmers. Maybe we drop that message and we sell the big picture because there's volunteers everywhere all around the world that could benefit from this. And one of our guys said, no, we're doing this. We don't care what the judges think. We don't care if we go anywhere with this. We set out to do a thing that was going to help out the little guys. Small farmers, what are they going to do? Hire some technologists? They're going to find some blockchain developers to help them build a Web3 solution? It's just not going to happen. So we thought, let's just have some fun and see if we can come up with something.
Yeah, look, I think the most exciting piece of the entire Web3 space is the real world assets and real world implications. That's obviously my larger interest, is how do you take this technology and insert it into dumb contracts and things that are broken, like governance and finance and banking. And you also have a fintech background as well, right? Yeah, so I'm sure you came to fintech saying there's got to be a better way to do, banking, carbon-based banking, right? And that was the fintech problems. Then Web3 came out and was there's a better way to do fintech.
Yeah.
So how are you taking that process and inserting it into City DAO? Are you? Is that something that you bring to the table for them?
My gosh, there's, hard things are hard, right? And when you talk about financial systems, global financial systems, institutions that have been around for decades, centuries in some cases, it's not just that you have a juggernaut that happens to be there or be in the way. You're talking about something that grew into what it was for good reason, right? There's a reason that these companies exist. There's a reason that the financial system is what it is today.
Structuralism.
The structure is there and it serves a purpose. But there are often inefficiencies. There are often opportunities to revisit a lot of that. And a lot along the lines of what we're talking about for kind of general governance, right? There's not a lot of wiggle room to experiment. They don't have a lot of opportunity to try new things. Well, we are the Petri dish. We are that proving ground to say, listen, the door's wide open to come up with whatever it is that you could possibly invent that could disrupt the system in a positive way. Those are the companies that are going to get gobbled up. Those are the projects that are going to get financed, and we're going to see new solutions. We're going to see amazing things happen. Not to drop names here, but I think it was Chris Dixon who talks about this Cambrian explosion of creativity and things that are going to happen, and it's so obvious that this is going to be the catalyst for all of that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that there's this like general notion, especially with people I know who are maybe older, or maybe they come from TradFi, or maybe they come from real estate, where they're just like, this is total bullshit. These people are like Prius driving, like eco-conscious, like hippies. They're like, this is all, they don't realize, I don't meet those people. By and large, I meet
totally
largely, libertarian leaning, totally kind of like, really I would say agnostic. They're like politically agnostic, very practical people who just see things that are broken and are like, I can help fix this. Yes. I can help fix this. Yes. And also I want to be paid to do it, which is the part that somehow gets lost in translation. And actually I want to talk a little bit about that with CityDAO. I'm building a product that enhances yield for real estate.
Okay.
Because crypto has the ability to enhance yield. And that is crucial to my messaging, it's crucial to my mission, is there's the part of what's broken in the real estate ecosystem is people are buying buildings for like 2 and 3 and 4% returns, and that's absurd. I mean, it's just unsustainable. And they're just kind of like betting the farm on future rent growth. I have the ability to use crypto to enhance yields, not on stuff that's that sort of anemic in yield, but on things that are more reasonable. I can enhance that yield and give people like 200 bips better yield. And so if you're somebody who's going to ultimately participate as an investor in what we're doing, first of all, it's security, which I want to talk to you about. I don't know if you guys think you're a security or not, but we think we're a security, and we want to give people yield. I haven't really seen that messaging with CityDAO. I don't know if it exists. I don't know if it's like taboo in this sort of rarefied air of the people who are experimenting with the stuff you're dealing with, especially since I don't think a lot of these guys are coming from real estate or finance. I think these are people who are basically trading in ideas. So I'm interested to hear how like our ethos are different, and if you have that compensation tool built inside of CityDAO.
There's really going to be two components to this. The current citizenship for CityDAO is a gatekeeping token that gives you access to the community. It gives you access to governance. It's a governance token, right? That is not necessarily something that gives you any rights to the lands or any expectations of any profits or anything like that. So very comfortably, we believe that the CityDAO citizenship is not a security.
Are citizens paid yield in any way?
No.
Okay.
No.
Do they stake your governance token?
No.
Okay. But they can sell the governance token?
They can sell it. I mean, the secondary market, we see that all the time. That said, we do have real physical land that has been purchased by the DAO, and there's an expectation of tokenizing that land. So a separate effort is to put that land on chain, right? And that's been right on the cusp of happening for really just since this last month. And there's a lot of questions around, can people profit from that? Do we come out of the gate and identify it as a security or identify it as a physical asset, or is it some type of...
I'm going to tell you to identify it as a security. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to tell you that the notion that a piece of land that derives yield is not a security is irresponsible, or a pipe dream. I think you're a security if at that point. Now, I think your go-to-market was really interesting because we struggle with the whole thing as well. Are we security or not a security? It took us about 10 seconds to be like, we're a security. Right? But instead of doing what we did, which is we're going to offer, we have about $2 billion of assets in the pipeline, we're going to offer those as securities, right? You guys decided to bifurcate the process and say, okay, look, let's get a community of people who aren't yield obsessed right? I don't have like a bunch of degens in here. I don't have a bunch of apes, right? I have people who are thoughtful and heartfelt and want to use this as a tool to explore ways to organize, form capital, organize communities in the real world and in the metaverse. After we get there, then we can parse the data and figure out whom among us is, an accredited investor and whom among us must be offered this as a Reg CF.
Totally.
And that's the right approach. And I would ask you guys to be confident in that, right? Confident in the fact that it's a security, because I think the responsible thing for all of us in this $326 trillion space is to handle this with kitty gloves and not do something untoward.
Oh my gosh.
Where we have the SEC knocking on our door and saying, this guy over here thinks that, a 50-story skyscraper throwing off 8% yield is not a security because it's a JPEG. That's just silly, stupid, and dangerous, and we don't want that. So I would ask you guys to keep on doing it. I think you're doing it the right way. And I think your next step is probably going to be, how do you parse that data? We've spoken to some groups as well that have really great KYC, AML, accredited investor vetting. I don't know if you know this, but this might cause you some consternation. You do have an unlimited vicarious liability for any of the non-accredited investors who may purchase that security. If you happen to sell a security to the Taliban, you are personally liable.
Oh my gosh. Well, liability has been a key point of concern around not just our DAO, but DAOs in general, right? I mean, how do you want to sign up and participate in this, decentralized autonomous organization? Well, you as an individual, you can't claim to be, this esoteric kind of out there in the ether contributor. You're potentially available to that, exposed to that unlimited liability. And a lot of people don't think about that, right? And at CityDAO, the opportunities that you can, the ground that you can cover before we even touch the real physical land and the real, putting that asset on chain and having, the extra concerns that come around that, we still have all these aspects, the governance that we can experiment with, the ability to have a metaverse presence on our physical piece of land. All of those things can happen, and we don't get anywhere close to the rails. We're not really risking any significant trouble at that point. But when we get into that kind of next level, it gets pretty serious.
So what is the total value of the land that CityDAO actually holds right now?
Oh, it's not very much. I mean, relatively insignificant. I think the current parcel 0 was purchased for $250,000, right? So this is 40 acres in remote Wyoming. That particular parcel may even be conserved, right? It may be an experiment of, a conservative, lease on that parcel to, be representative more than actual. But there's talk of, potentially picking up another parcel with the intention of developing it into a city or developing it into a, something that can have an expected return.
So I really like the idea of making, conserved land acquisitions. It's a process I call de-development. And the way that works, and something I hope other DAOs pick up on, is you may have a group of people whose primary concern is safeguarding land as our sort of universal birthright, right? That we want to make sure that this land is preserved, it's not developed on in certain areas, right? I mean, you don't want Yellowstone developed. You don't want, Pavones or Costa Rica to turn into like a giant hotel conglomerate. Like you want that break preserved, you want that beach preserved, right? So you could put together these DAOs that do nothing but acquire this land, then encumber it completely so that it can never be developed. And then turn that conserved land into glamping sites with zero impact. And then as a tokenized member of that community, you now have the right to either go to this wonderful world-class break and surf it in this amazing glamping tent, or lease it out as an Airbnb, or sell that right in the future. But the only thing that can't happen is you can't turn it into a Sheraton. No offense, Sheraton, your hotel's great, but I prefer Pavones.
Well, this is coming back to the most exciting aspects of CityDAO, is those primitives don't exist, whether you're talking about trying to see high yields, or you're talking about conservation, or fill in the blank, whatever that might be. This is so cutting edge that nobody really knows how to make that happen.
Yeah.
It would be amazing if we could come up with those primitives that could then be taken to conservation, that could be taken to high yield commercial, land, whatever it is that people are looking for. I think the conversation that we keep coming back to internally in CityDAO is, how do we create the toolkit that others can then leverage to do whatever it is that they want to do?
Absolutely. I mean, the way I see it is this is a $326 trillion market. I'd love to tell all my competitors how to compete. I just don't care. Like it's immaterial to me. My particular bent is, my favorite type of conservation is high yield conservation. My favorite type of activism is profitable activism, right? And because I believe that the durability of any organization is directly linked to its ability to compensate people and keep them together. Like my first business was a family business. I made a family business because money keeps families together. Money also tears families apart. But you're more likely to get torn apart in poverty than in wealth.
Absolutely.
And so, I would like for people to develop programs that are playing with the ideas that we're discussing, that give people the ability to participate in this like groundbreaking technology and be compensated for it, really truly compensated for it.
Totally. Well, no margin, no mission, right?
There you go.
If you we can come up with some amazing ideas and get people excited about contributing and getting it off the ground, but if that's all you've got, people are going to encounter tough times. There's not going to be this endless flow of money into a good cause, and it's great to get that as a little bit of seed to get things moving, but you gotta be able to pull some real money in to make things happen. And even for CityDAO, one of the things that we've talked about is, beyond those primitives, what if we could offer the actual services, right? What if you wanted to conserve land? You were going to create a DAO to, people are doing this. I heard about one in Patagonia. There's some other ones happening.
Well, Patagonia, the company, has the biggest one in Patagonia.
Okay.
I mean, that's precisely their mission. I mean, they've been buying land in Patagonia.
Oh, I mean, there's a DAO that set out to conserve land in Patagonia. Like they're raising funds to say we're going to.
What I'm saying is
that's actually Patagonia.
Patagonia, the company, is doing this and
That's
has
incredible.
been doing this, for decades.
See, I didn't even know this. And we think about, well, what if you have, I don't know, maybe somewhere in the Himalayas there's a mountain that is at risk of being mined, and someone gets a little momentum going to say we want to protect that mountain. Well, what if you could come to CityDAO and just outsource all of the related aspects, right, to help you make that happen? Like you can manage the organization, we can handle the on-chain details, right? And of course we'll make it open source and available to anyone who wants to use it, but that could be, those services could be an opportunity for
Absolutely.
CityDAO.
I think that's a great business model for CityDAO, is to become the sort of the plumbing and the rails for other groups to organize, to self-organize like this. There is a potential very scary future where this is used in a way that's not so wonderful. I don't know if you guys talk about this around the CityDAO metaverse, but you build these tools that allows people to deploy capital in a way that gives them supreme latitude. And we always think of it as like, oh, we're going to buy a mountain in the Himalayas. We're going to buy Patagonia, and you're not going to be able to, to deforest Patagonia, and that's like awesome, right? That's great. How's about I'm going to buy a municipality, and it's going to be 100% white? How's about I'm going to buy a municipality, and I'm going to constrain housing supply on purpose in like radical NIMBYism to make sure that my profit value or my property value is forever increasing, and nobody else can be there. Then I'm going to put private security around the perimeter of my private. I mean, we already have this in effect, right?
Totally.
But what these people who have these gated communities with the security have never had is a DAO structure to codify that and to create a treasury and make sure that that sort of exclusionary building, development, and organization can exist for perpetuity with a well-funded treasury.
Sure. I mean, we're talking about a digital country club at this point, right? A lot of these, injustices that we see that have been, preserved in a lot of ways. The handcuffs get a little stronger in some of these situations, right? So there's a reality there that these challenges can be exacerbated, right? And we talk about this whole community as being, very open and very inclusive and everything else. Well, I was at a gated lounge, and I had to show my NFT to get in.
Yep.
And the person that I'm talking to is saying, I'm a young guy. I'm just learning about this for the first time. I love to buy shoes. He's like, check out my Yeezys that I brought in.
Yeah.
And he's like, I get it. And he's like, and I'm seeing this, and this is the same world. It's like, it's cool to see like you old people like doing the same thing. He's 22, And he's like, so it's like cool. He's like, these are like your like cool tennis shoes, right? You know, I'm a sneakerhead. That's what he's telling me. And
He's like, these are sneakers for boomers?
totally. He was very polite about it. But basically, like as I'm having this conversation, I wanted to be like, oh man, let me like help you get into this world and everything else. But I'm like, as I'm thinking that, I'm realizing like, he's just going to get fed to the wolves. You know, he's going to see all these like horrible projects that we're seeing and everything else. And this is, I mean, it's accessible for me as a very experienced technologist, and I'm privileged to have been able to have the experiences that I have in life. But in some ways, it's not nearly as open and as accessible as we hope it can be and want it to be. And that's obviously something we can do to better that. But one thing that I haven't been able to shake is, let's assume that all the dystopian, horrible things are true. Let's assume the worst for all of this, right?
So far, I'm with you. Go on.
All right. Let's just say there's no value. It couldn't possibly bring the world to a better place.
Yep.
There's no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Okay.
My advice would be to keep your friends close and your enemies closer. If this is our future and it's going to be horrible and dystopian and miserable,
get in and start building it.
Shouldn't we have an idea of how this works? Shouldn't this at least make sense to us? You know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as is often said in New York, you know, if you don't know what's being served, you're probably on the menu.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
You know, and so you really ought to know what's going on. You should. It's your responsibility to be hip to this stuff. But then there becomes the question of what's our responsibility as builders inside of the space. Like, we already know how you can leverage the technology that we're describing to do awful things. It just so happens that in general, the people who create the technology first and are early are typically not nefarious, typically.
Right.
Excluding the rug pulling con artists. You know, the vast majority of the space, I would say, are people who are like, oh, this is really cool, I want to play with it, I have an intellectual interest. I could see how I could apply this to solve a problem that didn't really make sense to people before, and it's usually pretty good. But we also know that right after those people are the people who are like, oh, I could crush democracy with this. You know, I can crush a nation state with this. I can have my will with this. I can leverage capital and deploy it, like actually weaponize capital with this, right?
Yes.
And we already know that. Right? So the question is like, what are we going to do as founders and as people who are architecting this thing so that we don't hand our kids, you know, a hot mess?
Gosh, I suspect that, you know, as this gets sifted out, we'll start to see, you know, like in Star Wars, you know, we'll understand the different factions at play here. You know, it's early enough that it's a little bit difficult to tell friend from foe, but I think, you know, you sit down with somebody and you kind of have a gut feeling of, you know, are you talking to somebody who's out here grifting, or are they trying to make a difference, you know?
That's the metaverse bullshit detector is the carbon world.
Bullshit. There it is.
The metaverse bullshit detector is this.
Yeah.
It's the carbon world. You know, which is another, I mean, again, the real world asset thing, like, you can't escape this. Like, this is who we are. We live in these sacks of skin with a bunch of chemicals, and we walk around a carbon-based world. And
the meat space.
This is the meat space.
Yeah. I think as this progresses, it's like anything else, right? Once you get in your 10,000 hours, you can start to make sense of these things very quickly. It's like an investor who hears 1,000 pitches a day, right? You start to understand the difference between the same old BS and something that's like, all right, this has got something. There's some potential here, right? And there's some things that are, I don't want to say that you can't fake, but that are really, really hard to fake, right? Yeah. Being genuine and having a track record of contributions. I mean, can I bring the shill zone back?
Cold shill. This is a cold shill for kudos. Cold shill for kudos. Shill it, boy.
No, I mean, I grew up on a farm. I learned how to drive. I have a picture of me learning how to drive on a tractor.
A yield farm, or
like a real good old-fashioned physical, like put the seeds in the ground, add some water, let the sun
money?
shine. No, like you know, where your food comes from.
A bodega, as far as I can tell. You're putting bodegas in the ground, boy.
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up on a farm, right? Farming community in Pennsylvania. And 5 years ago, I'll show Colorado. Secretary of State in Colorado had a competition called Go Code Colorado. And they wanted public data to be widely available to everyone. We won 2017 for trying to help farmers, right? Here I am, getting some technologists together, hanging out, having a good time. We don't even care if we win. We just want to like figure out a way to help out the agricultural community. I've got a track record of contribution. I'm not showing up like, hey, I want to like do something with agriculture. I'm like, this is something that's meaningful to me. This is a territory that I want to see succeed. These are people who I want to see succeed. This is our future, feeding ourselves.
So why can't City DAO, clip off some treasury for you? Have you not cold shilled them?
There's some talk about this.
Oh yeah, okay.
Not for me in particular, but why wouldn't we have a little agricultural operation, right?
Why not?
Why not have an actual farm that was productive and could make money potentially?
Yeah, you get some rooftop farming in cities. I've seen it.
Yeah.
It could happen.
City DAO's urban rooftop agricultural operations, maybe next year you'll see that coming.
Oh, that's a new kind of shill. Future shill. That's great. That's good. I like it.
I don't know. I mean, it's not just the idea, right? It's can you get the momentum? Can you get people to buy into it? Can you actually get the thing off the ground? That's what's
so how much treasury does City DAO have? How much you bench? What are you squatting over there? How much treasury are you sitting on?
6-7 million, something like that.
I mean, I think that's a ton of money. I mean, obviously, we know, my favorite guy, Lost Boy, can raise like $300 million while he's in high school, and that's empirically more money than $6 or $7 million.
Yeah.
But $6 or $7 million for people who are basically taking a flyer on everything, that's a $6 or $7 million endorsement for the founders not being pieces of shit.
Totally.
That's all that is.
That's it.
Basically, you guys are like, anybody think we're not terrible people? And they're like, I think your $7 million is not horrible, which is a lot of millions of dollars of not horrible.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. So, we're putting this together, right? So we have, I would say we're less of the authoritative experts in this area and more representatives of the rest of the citizens, right? We're representing the community and saying, how do we put something together that actually benefits the whole of City DAO and honors the spirit and the mission and everything else?
It's just like representative democracy. Are people basically buying your judgment?
Yeah. But going back to, do we have help? Were you gonna,
I'll help you 100%. I would love to help you guys.
We'll tap you for that. Absolutely.
I don't even need kudos to do it. Reverse shill.
Yes. I mean, that is actually like the perfect pitch. I mean, it's that kind of thing. I mean,
make me kudo 1, make me kudo 0, and you got me.
Kudo 0.
I'm kudo 0?
We'll make you kudo 0.
You make me kudo 0.
Right,
I'm
we're
in.
We're gonna find when we actually figure out what the hell a kudo is.
Yeah.
And how to give it to somebody. You're kudo 0.
I want to be kudo 0. And I gotta be honest with you. In general, one of my.
Wait, hold on. I have a team. I have to be fair to my team. As long as someone else hasn't been, you're my first kudo 0.
Oh, I'm your first. See what's happening? I'm already being subordinated to people. This is the problem with governance. You made me a promise. You fucking rugged me on TV. You rugged me
Instant
on
rug.
TV.
Instant rug.
Okay,
hold on.
Hold on, dude. Here. You're like the best Web3 founder ever.
Here's what I will promise you. You're my first kudo.
Oh
okay?
my God!
But hold on.
You gave me Web3 eyes too when you did it.
All right, here we're gonna. Since this has been working, I'm gonna take this to my team, all right, and I'm gonna ask them.
Yeah.
Can I commit our first kudo to somebody, right?
Not just somebody. To jab #0827.
Jab #0827. Done. All right. See what the team says. Listen, I'm a team player, okay? I can't speak for them, all right? But I've got you. I'm shilling you now. I just shilled you. I'm putting you out there in front of them, and I'm saying,
inverse reverse shill. That's like 2 points in wrestling, right?
Totally.
That's
totally.
amazing, man. I was up there, and the next thing I knew, I was behind you. Oh man, that's great.
I'm doing the best. I promise you the best that I can do. That's what I can promise you.
All right, look.
That's what I have to offer.
Look, I appreciate it. I hope I become kudo 0. Truth be told, if I'm not, I'll still help you guys. I would love to see you guys succeed. I'd love to see all of our competitors succeed. It's a big space, and we didn't get into a chance to discuss how formation capital changes real life communities in my project, but it does. We have similar ethos. I would say the one distinction between how we view these things is, I'm a New Yorker and I'm deeply cynical, and I live in New Jersey now, which is worse than New York. I'm deeply cynical in a lot of ways, and I think that the onus is on us to create yield. I'm very yield focused because I'm afraid that if people don't see money, they're not going to work for kudos. Some people will, I will, but some people won't. And I want to make sure that we get good labor that's doing good things and handing something back to future generations that isn't terrible. Now, that all said, the way we end the show is the guest shills us out. So you have kind of two projects to shill, so you might have to double shill. You just want to put a button on it, like a nice tight little button, like boom, and just give them that last shill.
All right. Oh, this is good. This is, I'm kind of humble, so I feel like I'm being put on the spot, but.
The humble shill, that's another shill.
No, I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah, go.
All right, so here's what you need to know. I don't know if there's like a community pitch for this, but ETH Denver, the builders on my team are coming out with kudos. We're going to pitch this weekend on Sunday. So first shill, kudos. Second shill, City DAO, right? I mean, we are experimenting with on-chain governance, with putting assets and like land on-chain. And third shill, last but not least, this is definitely my favorite shill of all. I've got some friends out in California who are trying to start a vineyard. They're gonna start a vineyard. They started Vines DAO. They just launched this. So go check out Vines DAO. Yeah.
Dude, thanks for coming down.
So good.
And we'll do this again sometime.
Absolutely.